Hey everybody, it's Greg from Bell's Backyard. All right, today we're going to be talking about your fall cabbages and how to plant them. We've had a lot of questions on how to do that, so we're going to answer these, and we're going to keep it very basic and very specific. If you're new to fall gardening, or if you've tried in the past and you thought you were going to end up with a beautiful heads of cabbage that look something like, well, this, but truthfully you ended up with something that looks like, well, this. So we're going to cover the basics, and the basics of every vegetable, every plant that you want to plant has 5 things, and we call it LEAPT. That's L-E-A-P-T. That's the right light, the right environment, the right amendments, the right plant planted at the right time. So we're going to break these down, and we're going to talk about each specific letter of LEAPT. So let's jump right in and we'll talk about the right light. With cabbage, all cabbages need between 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day. So what we want to do is make sure that you're in a location, that's the other L, that's going to provide that 6 to 8 hours of light. Now, one thing that you can do to see if you've got the right light, on my phone, I've downloaded something called Sun Path. It's something I've been using for years. It's the Sun Path app. And it's somebody trying to call me to ask me more questions. It's the Sun Path app. Let's go back to it. So with this app, it's a free download. Like I said, I can put in the exact date, set the date, and I can set this date for November, and I'm going to dial it into the 1st, and we'll talk about why I picked November the 1st here in a minute. It has to do with the timing. But I can now, when it's in November the 1st, I can take my phone and I can raise it up, and it's going to show me the sun's path. I can see when it's going to cross and when it's going to rise above a building. I'm going to see how much sunlight is going to be throughout the day, and it's going to tell me exactly what time that it's going to go behind the trees that are on the horizon. So we're looking for something that's 6 to 8 hours a day. Here's a little hint. A lot of times you may think that the location that you have is not going to have enough light of the 6 to 8 hours because it doesn't have 6 to 8 hours of sun during the summertime. That could be true, but as the sun starts to get lower on the horizon, that southern sun, and as it starts to move across, you're going to see a lot of times what used to block the sun, that sun's now going to be exposed. It's going to be below those branches. So give that a try. Walk around your yard, try to find those 6 to 8 hour locations. It works really well if you're doing a raised garden bed or if you're doing container gardens like that. So talked about the light requirements. Next, let's talk about the E, which is the right environment. Now, cabbages like to have a well-drained soil. They like to have a moist soil, but not a wet soil. So what you want to do if you're planting into the ground, and we're going to talk both. We're going to talk about in the ground and if it's going to go into a container or if it's going to be in a raised garden bed. If you're going to plant it into the ground, what you want to do is dig a hole. It's about 12 by 12, and you want to fill that hole with water. Give it a few minutes. Come back and look. If you see that that hole still has water in it, chances are that hole is not going to drain enough for these cabbages. So you're going to have to either put some amendments to it or consider raising them up, putting them into a container or putting into a raised garden bed. Also on the amendments, you want to amend the soil. If you're going into the ground, you want to make sure that you have a lot of nitrogen that's in it. The cabbages love nitrogen. Now we use, you can see over here probably behind me, we use cow manure as our amendment to our soil. If you haven't seen my video about the fall garden mix that we use for our plants, I'll leave a link down at the end of this video and you can take a look at it and see. It's very, very simple. So when we talk about the environment, the next thing we have is we want to talk about the amendments, what you want to put into your soil. Now, the soil that the cabbage like to have, we already talked about the well-drained part, but we want to have a soil with a pH between about a 6.4 to a 6.8. I like to have it a little bit lower. So a 6.4, the lower the pH, the redder the cabbage is going to be, the greener the cabbage is going to be, the lusher it's going to look. If you can get away with that, the lower the pH, the better off that your cabbages are going to be. Let's talk about going into the soil though. If you're going directly into the ground, I'm going to go ahead and make it around a 6.8. The only reason why I'm doing that, one of the hazards of growing cabbages is clubroot nematodes. Now, clubroot nematode loves to have damp soil. which is what these guys are going to be in. They also love to have a pH of around a 6.4, 6.5. So if we raise that pH a little bit to about a 6.8, it kind of eliminates some of that pressure on those clubroot nematodes. If you need to lower your soil pH, you can use the soil acidifier. I think I've showed it to you before, but I always keep some around. But just a regular organic soil acidifier. This is from Epsoma. It works well. Sprinkle it along the top of the soil, and it's going to be just fine. You'll get the soil pH that you want to have for these lettuces or for these cabbages. Now, also you can have you can judge your soil pH by the color, if you're planting a red cabbage, by the color of the cabbage. If it seems to be a little less red or it doesn't have that purple luster to it that you like, it means the pH is a little bit too high. Sprinkle a little soil acidifier into it, it'll drop it right down. Now, we've covered the light, we've covered the environment, we've covered the amendments. Now we're going to get into the P, the fun part, the plants. What plant to plant? Well, I'd like to say that I knew exactly what species or what type of cabbage that you want to grow in your particular market. That's not possible. Every market is a little bit different, but I can help you narrow down what you should be growing. So first thing, let's talk about seedlings or growing seeds. If you're watching this video, you're probably beginning or you've had some trouble with cabbages in the past. I say stay with the seedlings. Don't try the seeds. You're going to have a lot more issues with it. It's another bit of complications that you don't want to have to endure. Now, we are going to be planting some, starting some from seeds, but that's in a whole different video. But stay with the seedlings. Now, when we talk cabbages, there's going to be two types. There is a 70 to 80 day type cabbage, and there is a 45-day cabbage. And these things are critical when it comes time to figure out when we're going to plant our cabbages. So let's look at the 70 to 80 day cabbages first. These are the larger cabbages usually. They're either going to be green or they're going to be red. Now, which ones do you plant? That's entirely up to you. But what you want to do is find, for the green cabbages, those are usually the ones that are going to grow. Their heads are going to be between 6 pounds to 8 pounds. Those are going to be the ones that you're going to use for your coleslaws, but also the ones that you're going to can into a kraut, or if you're going to make chow chow to go with your pinto beans, which absolutely I love. Maybe I'll do a video of how to do chow chow. So the larger cabbages, I would stay with a hybrid type. There's two. I would either go with a hybrid type or you're going to go with an all-American winter. The best way to find that out is go to your local growers, go to your local stores, your local nurseries. They have a person there and they're responsible for just buying plants for that nursery. They go to the wholesalers, they go to the local growers. You can talk to them. I just had a conversation with the local nursery that's here, and I was telling them exactly what I wanted, and they just said talk to Robin when she comes in on Tuesday, and she'll be able to go get that for you from the local grower. So if you want to do a 70 to 80 day cabbage, look for a hybrid type cabbage. The one that I got here is called, this one's called a Primo Vantage cabbage. There's also other green cabbages that are out there that everybody likes. It's called a Dutch round cabbage or a flat Dutch cabbage. Those work incredibly well from zones about 5 to zone 9A or so. But those are good. Your red cabbages, those are going to be your larger cabbages. This one that we got is also, and this is a non-GMO cabbage, and then this one is the Ruby Perfection. You're going to see this Ruby Perfection grown by a whole bunch of different suppliers, whether it's going to be your big box stores or whether it's going to be your local growers. The Ruby Perfection is an incredibly good red cabbage. It takes about 75 to 80 days for it to mature completely. It doesn't split when it gets when it's been out for too long or when it gets a little bit too much water. It's a great cabbage. Now, why would we pick a red cabbage? There's a couple reasons. One, it's beautiful. I mean, it's nice to have color in your garden when it's fall and everything else is dying off on you. But the other reason, if you've ever gotten pressure from your cabbage moths, cabbage moths have a tendency not to go to a red cabbage. Some people theorize that the reason why they do it is because that cabbage moth is white, and also that the caterpillars that they produce are green and they're easier seen on a red cabbage, so they try to stay away from it. They go more towards where the cabbage, where they're more camouflaged, so they stay away from the reds. So you have your 70 an 80-day cabbages, either a reds or a greens, find your local supplier. They'll be able to provide you what you're looking for. The other one we want to talk about is going to be your 45-day cabbages. These, well, quite frankly, if you're new to it, 45-day cabbage may be the best one for you. The heads are only about 2 to 2.5 pounds, about the size of a large softball, and also they can be planted in a smaller container like this guy right here. I don't know if you can see it. This guy right here, this is a 45-day cabbage. This one happens to be a Catarina. There's also some other ones. What's my other 45-day cabbage that I just picked up? Let me see, those are all Primo Vantages. Anyway, but the 45-day cabbage is a smaller head, can be grown in a 3.5 gallon pot. It grows faster. You're not going to have to time Mother Nature quite as precisely as you do with the cabbage that has to grow for 70 to 80 days. With that, now let's jump into the next thing. Let's jump into how we're going to plant these things. If we're going to stay on the peas, we'll talk about planting. If we are going with the larger head cabbage, your red cabbages have a tendency to grow a little bit larger. If you're going to be going into the ground, you want to space them between 16 to 24 inches apart for your reds, because they are quite a massive plant. If you're doing your hybrid greens, or you're doing like your Dutch cabbages or some type of an heirloom, those can be planted sometimes 12 inches, but you probably want to keep them closer to a 16 to 18 inches apart in the ground. If you are going to go into a container or in a raised garden bed, this guy right here is going to turn into one of our sample container gardens. Larger cabbages, 5-gallon container, 5-gallon buckets is what you're looking for. If you're doing a Catarina, or if you're doing a 45-day cabbage, then we can pull it off with a 3 to a 3.5 gallon pot. Now when we plant these guys, let me see here. When you plant these guys, what we're going to do is we're going to fill up our pot. I don't know if this is going to make any sense to you guys, or if you can see it or not, but we're just going to fill our pot up. Pull this right up here to me, and then when you pull your plant out, see, look how good these things are. And that's from just some small little nursery just right up the street. They got me exactly what I needed. Now this is a 45-day cabbage that's here. So all I'm going to do, hold that a little bit closer, I'm going to plant it just to the depth of where the seedling's coming out of the tray. So we're just going to push that right in. We're going to kind of pack it down. And you don't have to pack it incredibly tight if you're going into a container. If you're going into the soil, another trick that you want to do is you want to take it, if you're going into the ground, you want to take it and kind of pack it down a little bit tighter around the base of it. The reason being is it makes it a little bit more difficult for those clubroot nematodes to be able to get to the roots of the plant. So a little bit harder compaction. Don't pack it down so nothing can get to it, but a little harder compaction into the ground is what you're looking for. All right, next thing is, let's talk time. The key to this successful cabbage growing is time. Any fall crop is time. Getting it timed correctly. And I can tell you, you will be sacrificing plants. But what you have to do is be prepared for that. So you want to try a succession planting. Now, the way that I do it is I will take the growing date. So like these cabbages, like this Primo and these red cabbages that I have, I'm going to take that 75 days. I'm going to find out where my first frost date is. I'm going to take that first frost date and I am going to add 1 week. This is a little more complicated, a little more advanced, because I do want the cabbages to be mature with being able to hit a little bit of a light frost. We're trying to time Mother Nature and really can't, so we're going to go with succession type planting. So I'm going to add a week, and then I'm going to back off those 70 days. That's going to be the day that I first do my planting. Now, we can't figure out exactly when it's going to be our first frost. We can't figure out when it's going to freeze or when it's going to get cool enough for the cabbages to grow. So we want to plan on having a succession planting. So these guys here, right now it's 82 degrees during the day. I'm hoping that it's going to get below 80, which is what these guys need to have. If it's above 80, once they get about 6 or 8 weeks old, these guys are going to bolt, and all they're going to do is they're not going to form a head. They're just going to bolt up and they're going to try to produce seeds. So I'm gambling that this is going to work. My expectations, though, are that these guys are not going to be able to come to full maturity because Mother Nature is just not going to make it cold enough for me. So in 2 weeks, I plan on doing this entire cycle again. So if I'm lucky and everything gets below 80 degrees and they take off, then I'm going to have a wonderful crop. But I do want to make sure that I know that I am going to do a succession planting. Now, when we talk about this timing thing also, let's talk about the quantity that you want to plant. It's nice to think that you want to grow 30 to 40 heads of cabbage. Well, 30 to 40 head of cabbage at 6 to 8 pounds. Let's go 30 pounds. That's 240 heads of cabbage. Nobody really needs that. I mean, nobody's going to do, what are you going to do with 40 pounds of cabbage? Try to grow between, if you're a family and you just want to eat fresh cabbage, 6 heads on a succession planting is going to be plenty. If you want to do some canning where you're going to produce some sauerkraut or you're going to do some chow chow, you can do 60 pounds of cabbages, which is going to be about 10 of these guys is going to produce 60 pounds. That's going to produce 34 pints of sauerkraut. That's an incredible amount of sauerkraut. So you don't have to have a lot of cabbage for just your regular backyard garden like we're growing here. If you want to have it in production, and fine, then you can go ahead and grow more. But that way you don't feel quite as bad when you lose 6 plants, because you're going to have 6 plants coming in behind it, and you'll have plenty of cabbage throughout the course of the year. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them down in the comments below. If you have any other systems that you use that you found to be more successful than what I was talking about, please let me know. But up until then, I'm Greg from Bell's Backyard. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next video.